The NBA's new collective bargaining agreement will make rebuilding faster, easier, and more efficient. I think next on Locked on Jazz.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps as well as on YouTube. Join the community, get in the conversation, be a part of it. To the everydayers out there, you are simply the best. Thank you for making Locked On what it is. Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. I do want to thank you. Our few things. Locked On as a network's May numbers were incredible, and Locked On Jazz May numbers were back up in the top 5 of each of our shows, both audio and video. And so that's because of you guys. Thank you very much. Glad to have everyone back. The numbers have been much higher recently, so super appreciate it. Here's today's plan. We're going to do our same thing we've been doing all week long. If you haven't caught it, go back. We're deep diving on prospective picks at the 5th pick of the draft. Tomorrow we'll look at Ace Bailey and we'll look at the 21st picks with Rafael Barlowe. Today we're looking at Tre Johnson of Texas, who has been my favorite so far along the way because he can score and he's a bucket getter, and I like bucket getters. We'll hear from Rafael Barlowe on him, and we'll hear from Brad Kellner, Locked on Longhorns host, on him as well. First, I want to do a thought exercise with you, okay? This is usually on these shows, if you do them right, you have kind of a big takeaway and a thought and a big opinion, and you guys can react. I could do that here. It'd be disingenuous. So this is what's been noodling in my head about where the NBA is and what's taking place in the NBA and the impact of the new collective bargaining agreement. And something Austin Ainge said the other day adds to it. So let's walk through it for a second. What the system used to be was that you got 3 stars generally, or at least 2 very, very high-level stars and a third player. And then once you acquired those players, you fairly easily built around them through free agency, maybe an occasional trade, very rarely draft picks. Actually, if you think about the Miami Heat and the San Antonio Spurs, very rarely are you adding a young player to the mix. Youth is not a part of it. Those free agents you're signing have to decide that because you have the first superstar players, that it's an appealing marketplace to be in. That's kind of the game. The game used to be you go get the star players, and then if you could, in the case of the Jazz, when Derek Harper said no and Ronnie Cycli said no, we couldn't even do it that way. But you got those 2 or 3 star players, very difficult to do. And you either got those by draft, Stockton, Malone, Duncan, or you got them through free agency. Dwayne Wade stayed in Miami, but Chris Bosh, LeBron James, etc. Okay. And then once you got them, you built around them. And that was how you built a winning franchise. And that actually, to some extent, is what led to tanking, because for those franchises that couldn't play free agency, there really was little other ways to which you could get this done. So that's what veterans are important, traded for their final pieces. That's the model. I think we have a different model here. So first thing I think is that you cannot win without 240 minutes of quality basketball on your roster. 48 times 5. We've talked about this. If you're an everydayer, I've been saying this to your friends, and your friends think you're really smart because we've been talking about this for 3-4 years now. You have two really, really high level, all-star level players, and we'll see. Indiana's a little unique. Let's see how long this thing lasts in Indiana. I mean, they're great. They've been to the Eastern Conference Finals twice. There's something real going on here. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying, but the East feels funky and just feels like there was some funky stuff there. But frankly, even if Cleveland had won, I'd say they have two high-level players and maybe a third all-star level player. They didn't have a top 10 player in the NBA either, and maybe Halliburton should be thought of that. So you have two high-level players, probably two all-star level players. And then you have another, and one of those has to be on the ball. Okay? One of those has to be on the ball. Then in the new model, you're developing some of your own talent. You're able to build a cadre of players toward your 240 minutes and add the all-stars on top and get pretty big results, I think. We've seen a minor version of this, which is Houston took their young players, had some depth, put non-all-stars, Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks on top, and got something. We've seen a little bit with Detroit, who had Cade Cunningham coming to his own young players, and he's the star. And they just added some depth to it and got results. Not great results, but some results. Indiana has a pretty good team, and they add Pascal Siakam on top for nothing, and they've been to the conference finals and the NBA finals twice. Your top players in the NBA, here's the key to what I think is about to happen. Because the first and second apron are so prohibitive, and particularly the second, and because you're not trying to do 3 stars and then build around them, because what happens now is if you get the 3 stars and you're in the first or second, near the first or second apron, you cannot acquire talent. Okay, so in the old model, you got 2 or 3 stars, and then you just acquired the talent underneath them, and you added it up, and you got your Robert Ory's and your Derek Foxes, and you're not Derek, what the heck was this? Rick Foxes and Derek Fishers, and you built your roster. You can't do that anymore in this new collective bargaining agreement because the first and second apron are so prohibitive. So to some extent, you have to have built your cadre of depth to get your 240 minutes prior to adding your all-star on top. I think, I don't know, but this is my thought exercise. And if this is the case, this makes rebuilding much faster because you use these draft picks, and maybe Keontae George isn't a starter or a star, but he's a 22-minute guy, and Isaiah Collier's a 15-minute guy, and Filipowski's a 22-minute guy, and they're not stars or starters, but they're pieces of your puzzle. And you're actually putting the ice cream on top, not the whipped cream. If we want to use an analogy, bad one, we'll go with it. So because the first or second apron's there, the minute you go sign your few stars and you're near the second apron, you can't be acquiring your 240 minutes. Look at Denver, look at Milwaukee, look at Phoenix, look at Philly. So what's going to end up happening is the top players in the league are going to be distributed more widely. That second and third best player on a roster is going to get moved because if someone is short, Michael Porter Jr. gets moved now so that they can use that money to get 240 minutes of depth. Miles Turner maybe doesn't get re-signed in Indiana because it's not just Miles Turner. It's going to cost them 2 other players. Minnesota's trade of getting Dante DiVincenzo and Julius Randle for 60 minutes a night instead of Karl Anthony Towns for 34 minutes a night was genius. So your roster is going to be 2 all-star level players, maybe a third who's really good, a lot of depth, acquired via trade and free agency. Your free agency is going to be your $12 million, $14, $16 million a year player who's somebody who's up on the second or third apron can't afford, and he fits into your roster. And Obi Toppin was just kind of let go by New York, but a good example in Indiana. Bruce Brown bounced around for a while, helped Denver win a championship. And your top tier players are going to be more widely distributed amongst the 30 teams. Cleveland shouldn't touch anything right now. They have 5 of the top 50 players in the world, 4 of the top 50 players in the world on the roster. I don't think anyone's going to do this again. Cleveland should hold this together. They should probably win a title next year. Because they have 4 of the top 50 players in the world. It's what Boston had. Boston's not going to be able to do it. Kristaps Porzingis, Drew Holiday, they're going to have to make moves. And then Jason Tatum's out. So this is my thought exercise on why this. And so then why does this get easier to rebuild? Because if the top players are going to be distributed more widely, then as a young team building up, Houston, Detroit, Utah in a few years, you have your young players. You have your 240 minutes of depth first because you've been drafting players and getting high-quality players. And you probably have some cap space to go get that $14 million player or $13 million. And then you trade in your last piece in a way that I don't think you used to be able to do so because trades, I believe, are going to be abundant. Austin Ainge's comment to me was, we used to hold on to players because bird rights mattered and they don't matter anymore. And the reason bird rights don't matter anymore is because you're not going to overpay your own free agent just to keep them because every dollar toward the first apron or second apron is so painful that you're going to end up letting that player go, or it's going to be a player becomes available to someone else. And the second thing he said is we used to keep on expiring contracts just so you could trade them, but trades are going to be much easier now. And we're going to negotiate deals tighter and harder than we ever have before because every million matters. So no one's going to go. We used to just re-sign a free agent, your own free agent, and if he got an extra $20 million, who cares? Well, now you care. And you used to trade for a player, and you didn't. If he got a little extra, fine. You can't do that anymore. But that also means that those players are going to become more available, more easily available, and then the percentages by which to make a trade that you have to get the salaries in if you're not in the first or second apron are way easier than they've ever been, so there'll just be much more player movement. That's my theory. Love your comments, love your ideas, whether you think that's true or not here in the process. Tre Johnson, deep dive with Rafael Barlowe. Is this a star? Is this a Devin Booker 20-minute a night scorer or a Jordan Poole 20-minute a night scorer? Coming up next on Locked On Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. NBA Finals about to get going. Major League Baseball is rolling, and now is the time to get involved and get into the action with FanDuel, delivering highlight performances every night. Major momentum shifts. Are you in on the action when it happens? Don't miss those moments, whether it's the game-changing shot, the breakout player. There's more time for you to be in the action and more fun. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off, during the game, live during game with player props, performance trends, same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Which players are showing up for the biggest moments? Who's going to be the player tonight that makes all the plays? Where are you going over, under? Is this a good Jalen Williams or a bad Jalen Williams game? Jump on it. New to FanDuel? Well, that's a perfect time to sign up. If you're new to FanDuel, head to FanDuel.com. Place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. I do sincerely, greatly appreciate it. We've got some great stuff for you. And that, of course, is Rafael Barlowe's Locked On NBA Big Board. He's going to join us here in just a second. Here's what we've done all week, if you've missed it. We have gone to Rafael Barlowe, our NBA draft expert, for Locked On NBA Big Board. You can get his newsletter as well, get his whole big board, all the great stuff. That's available. And we've taken and looked at VJ Edgecombe. We've looked at Jeremiah Fears yesterday, and today we'll look at Tre Johnson. Tomorrow we'll look at Ace Bailey. Con Knipple certainly is on the board and being considered by the Jazz at 5. Malawach is being considered by the Jazz at 5. I just can't wrap my head around either of those two yet, so these are the 4 I think we're looking at. 2 of them will be available for the Jazz. And I'll be surprised if we go Con Knipple or Malawich over the top of one of these two guys. And I think this is where you almost could play the equations, right? So if Ace Bailey goes 3, VJ Edgecombe goes 4, you're deciding between Tre Johnson and Jeremiah Fears. What's your pick? If VJ Edgecombe goes 3 and Tre Johnson goes 4, your decision is Jeremiah Fears or Ace Bailey. What's your pick? You can actually just play this out. Tre Johnson goes 3. Jeremiah Fears goes 4. Your choice is Ace Bailey or Tre Johnson. Like, figure it out. It gets kind of fun. Let's start with the draft expert, Rafael Barlowe, on Tre Johnson. Tre Johnson out of Texas. I will admit, me and my numbers, he's big green on my script. There's like 4 or 5 guys on my script that are green this year. Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper, Tre Johnson, Jace Richardson, Neat Clifford, and Walter Clayton Jr. The old guys always pop off the list at the bottom, and Neat Clifford and Walter Clayton Jr. So Tre Johnson jumps off to me numbers-wise. Give me an overall viewpoint of his game.
Bucket getter. He is the type of player that I think is going to be a 25-point-per-game scorer in the NBA. He led the SEC in scoring. The SEC was the toughest league in the history of college basketball, based off the number of teams in the NCAA tournament. And as a freshman, he led the SEC in scoring. Did not have a lot of creators around him as far as guys that could set him up for open looks. So a lot of his shots were contested, heavily contested, but he still shot 39% from 3 on 6 attempts per game with the hand in his face. So I think that he's going to be better in the NBA. He's a better passer than he's given credit for. He's kind of been unfairly labeled or put into this box as just a chucker or a scorer, but there's a lot more to his game than just putting the ball in the basket.
The 2 criticisms of him, because I kind of fell in love with him the first time I watched him. I like bucket getters. The 2 criticisms are, 1, you just mentioned he doesn't pass, and 2, he doesn't get to the rim. I honestly didn't leave any of the games I've watched of him feeling that. Like, I thought his teammates sucked, which was part of it. No offense to the other Texas Longhorns, but I didn't think they were very good. And I just didn't think there was any room to drive at all.
Yeah, he's a player that I've been watching since he was in 10th grade in high school. So I'm very familiar with his game. He's always been able to get to his spots. And that's like one of the key things you look for. Can he get to his spots? And so for him, yes, he doesn't consistently put the type of pressure on the rim that you would like, but I feel like Devin Booker doesn't consistently put a lot of pressure on the rim. But Devin Booker can get to his spots, and Devin Booker is an underrated passer. I even think a guy like Tyler Herro doesn't always get to the rim. So if Tre is somewhere between Tyler Herro and Devin Booker, I mean, I think that's a win, especially if he falls to number 5. But in my opinion, he's just a very underrated passer. And if you just watch his passing clips, he can make skip passes, live dribble passes. He can hit the roll man. He can find the lob threat. And I just think that people have just unfairly compared him to Cam Thomas.
It is. That's like, they love that one. I don't know if I think that's fair. All right. We've kind of touched on the reason I think he scores 20 points in the NBA. I guess the question is whether he does it as Jordan Poole or he does it as Devin Booker, right?
Yeah. Not all 20s are equal.
Right. What causes him to what's his failure? What's his problem?
If the athleticism concerns, because he's a good athlete. I want to make that clear. He's a good athlete, but he doesn't always play athletically. So if he's unable to get to the rim or get by defenders and he has to heavily rely on contested shots, then I think that could play a major role in his efficiency numbers. And, it's an analytics-driven game, and being efficient is the key to playing, especially on good teams. So that could be a concern, but if he makes it, it's just because he's just a phenomenal scorer that can score at the mid-range, and he's a knockdown outside shooter and a better playmaker than people think he is. Okay.
We asked this question about Ace Bailey. Is there a route by which on a team that works for him? Is he better off going to one type of team or one type of system? Is there something which works better for Tre Johnson than some other place?
Yeah, I mean, I think for him, because he can shoot and he's such a good shooter, and again, 39% on heavily contested threes on 6 attempts means that he's probably going to look even better if he has Like if he's on a team where there's somebody that can create open looks for him. So I think he can play anywhere unfairly, or maybe it's fair or not unfair. But there is a part of me that would like to see him go to a team where he is given the keys from day one and he can have the ball in his hands and actually show that he's more than just a guy that can score, and give him some teammates. I don't want to say his teammates sucked. That was pretty strong, but give him some NBA level teammates and see what he does. Because when he was in high school at Link Academy, he played some point guard, and I thought he played well there. And so maybe the best situation for him is a team like Utah, where he could be given the keys from day one.
I think most Jazz fans would like it. I know I would like it. I thought that little last note there from Rafael was important, that he played point guard in high school. It's the opposite of Keontae, right? Keontae played almost no point guard in high school. His point guard got hurt, and then he got thrown into the position a little bit in Dallas. It wasn't natural to him. The pick and roll numbers for Tre Johnson so far in his 1 year at Texas were very, very good. So to me, that's encouraging. I would be, as of we sit here on the 5th of June, if the Jazz end up with Tre Johnson, I'm ecstatic. I think he's the Tyler Herro, Devin Booker combo type concept would be fabulous. I don't know that that's your superstar, but it's certainly a major piece and would be great. I also will be surprised if he gets to 5 at this point. I just think he's better than the other guys. By the way, Tre Johnson ran 125 pick and rolls at Texas. He was in the 80th percentile of players that ran at least 100 pick and rolls. Probably, actually, let me back that up. At least 80 pick and rolls. It's 100's 5 a game, 80's 3 a game. Here were the guys that were better. Cooper Flagg's in the 91st percentile. Dylan Harper's in the 82nd percentile. Jace Richardson is in the 95th percentile. Neek Clifford is in the 95th percentile, and that's it. Keontae George, while he was at Baylor, ran 153 pick and rolls, was in the 66th percentile. We've had one of our listeners done some great work for me to try to figure out whether or not there's a correlation between good pick and roll percentage and NBA success. And actually, there does not seem to be, but it's a good indicator of just what he can and can't do. So it does not suddenly say, oh, you'll be great in the NBA. Local expert next on Locked On Jazz. It's Locked On Longhorns. Brad Kellner digging deeper into Tre Johnson. Continuing with the local experts, we turn to Brad Kellner, Locked On Longhorns, Tre Johnson. All right, so here's what I do every year, Brad, is I don't watch college basketball for 1 minute, honestly, and then I start sometime in April or May. And the first game I watched was Texas, Oklahoma, and I left in love with Tre Johnson. At the time, I'm convinced he was like 11 or 12 on draft boards. People were talking, and I'm like, who is this kid? He's scoring 20 to 25 a night in the NBA. So what was your first takeaway from him? And am I nuts and got him on a right day, or is that the Tre Johnson that you see?
Well, David, my first takeaway of Tre Johnson was the same as every Longhorn fan. The first game that Tre Johnson played in his freshman season, his only season at the University of Texas, was a neutral site game against Ohio State in Vegas, a game that Texas actually lost. But Tre Johnson had 29 points in that game on 50% shooting. He made 5 threes. And even though Texas lost, it was like, oh, we've got something special here. And he set a Texas record, breaking Kevin Durant's record for the most points ever scored by a Longhorn in a Longhorn debut. So if you're able to do something that even Kevin Durant couldn't do during his time in college basketball, you're doing something right. So that was my first impression of Tre Johnson. And yeah, he had a few of those performances throughout the year where he just took your breath away with his ability to score at all 3 levels. And even though Texas as a team didn't have the year that they wanted to have, Tre Johnson was sensational, and he dang near single-handedly carried the Longhorns to the NCAA tournament this past season.
Let's go off the court to start, because you have all the draft stuff we talk about, and all I ever look at is on the court. He's a 19-year-old freshman. Does Texas hide him and keep him away from the media? Did they let him go talk to the media? How did they deal with it?
That's a great question. And Trey Johnson actually represented Texas SEC media days before the season began. I can't recall a time I've ever seen a true freshman get invited to conference media days in any sport for any team. But that just goes to show you how highly this coaching staff Tre Johnson, not only as a player, but obviously as a leader too. And he kind of was the team leader for Texas. So no, they didn't hide him. They didn't shelter him from the media. Like, they made him available early and often. And he was a team leader for Texas off the court. So they bought into him very, very early on.
So I was not particularly impressed with his teammates. I don't think any of them will play in the NBA. I don't think I'll call any of their games at any point in their lives unless I've got a surprise there I didn't know about. One of the big guys, maybe. Well, you never know. Like, guys make it for a brink a little bit. And I made that clear in the last segment with Rafael. But it's unusual to hear what you just said, because 18-year-old, 19-year-old freshmen, they're going to be one and done, don't become leaders. How did he do that?
Right. It's crazy. I mean, look, he was a top 5 recruit in college basketball coming out of high school. It was a huge get for Rodney Terry when he was the head coach at the University of Texas. And I mean, look, Texas was kind of a random put together team. They lost a bunch of guys from their roster 2 years ago. So they went to the transfer portal a lot. They didn't have a lot of returning players from 2 seasons ago back from last year. So there was an opportunity there and a little bit of a void in leadership on the Longhorn roster. And again, Tre Johnson, I think everybody knew that he was going to be Texas's best player from the moment he got on campus, right? Anybody who had watched his high school tape at Lake Highlands or at IMG Academy, they kind of saw that this kid was special, and they knew there was a chance that he was going to be the best player on Texas right away. And again, with that sort of void in leadership with a bunch of departing players from the previous year, there was an opportunity there for Trey, and he took it and ran with it.
All right, so when we talked to Locked on Baylor and we talked to Locked on Oklahoma, we talked so much about the freshmen of VJ Edgecombe and Jeremiah Fears, their ebbs and flows of the season as a freshman. Did you see the same ebbs and flows from Tre Johnson? Definitely. He had a little bit of a freshman wall kind of midway through conference play. Now, he ended the year really strong, but, I think he got a little bit tired because he was the primary scorer for Texas, and he was attracting other teams' best defenders, and he was attracting a lot of double teams on nights in conference play because, like you said, David, the Longhorns didn't have enough other guys who were good enough to beat you. So opposing coaches were focusing all of their attention on trying to shut down Tre Johnson to where he had to work for his buckets. And that sometimes led to poor shot selection, right? He felt like he had to carry the team, so he would jack up a few shots that maybe weren't the best early in the shot clock. And I think that led to him, again, hitting a little bit of a freshman wall midway through the year. But he got hot down the stretch. There was a point where it looked like Texas wasn't going to make the NCAA tournament, the regular season finale against Oklahoma, and then in a couple of games in the SEC conference tournament in Nashville, Tre Johnson got hot again at the right time and kind of willed Texas into March Madness. So, yeah, there were ebbs and flows for sure. It wasn't always perfect. There were some off shooting nights. But, David, so this was the best year the SEC has ever had as a conference. And you could argue it's the best year any conference has ever had in the history of college basketball. I mean, the SEC got more teams into the dance than any league in any season. And Tre Johnson, as a true freshman, led the conference in scoring. Like, that's incredibly difficult to do. So even though there were a lot of ebbs and flows and it wasn't the smoothest roller coaster ride all season long, he was still able to do enough to lead maybe the best conference in college basketball history in scoring in his 1 year. Two criticisms that are being thrown about him. You touched on one of them. One is he's a gunner, and two is that he can't get to the rim. I have to say, because I'm kind of on board on this kid, I didn't see that in the 3 games I've watched. I thought he didn't get to the rim because there was no room. And I thought I didn't find him to be a gunner. In fact, maybe because I'm only watching him and I would have liked him to shoot more. I really did not see that. What's your thoughts on those two criticisms?
Yeah, I would go to 2 sort of other criticisms before I looked at that. Now, he can definitely finish at the rim. I mean, he is a true 3-level scorer. A great 3-point shooter, great from the mid-range. I know that's kind of a lost art in today's NBA, but Tre Johnson has the ability to knock it down from the mid-range. And, yeah, I would have liked him at times to be more aggressive, but I don't think he wasn't good at finishing. At times I thought he settled a little bit more when I thought he was capable of finishing at the rack. And he's also a great free throw shooter. So if he got fouled, it felt like an automatic 2 points when he got to the line. So I disagree with that. And again, I think part of the reason why he jacked up or gunned as many shots as he did was Texas just didn't have a whole lot of scoring options. Like it felt like, even a shot that some people would say like, oh, that's a horrible shot. How could you do that? That type of shot was better for the Texas offense than running their actual offense and somebody else coming up with a cleaner look. So I didn't have a problem with that. I think the two sort of big issues, if you will, with Tre Johnson, the defense, just he's got to get better. He would get targeted. I think part of the reason why he was so bad on defense was because he had to expend so much energy on the offensive end of the floor. But there's no doubt his lateral quickness wasn't quite good enough to hang in the SEC. And other teams would, do pick and rolls, and they would find ways to attack Tre on that end of the floor. So that's an area where he can improve. And then, we talked about his maturity. He's a mature kid, but at times he would wear his emotions on his sleeve a little bit too much. And if he was struggling shooting the ball a little bit, or if the team was struggling a little bit, he would let that get to him. And I think that could also impact his defense at times. So, look, I think he won't have to do that in the NBA because there's going to be tons of other talent around him to where he doesn't have to shoulder as much of the load as he did in his 1 year in Austin. But those, to me, the defense and then sometimes letting his emotions get the best of him, those are the two things I think any NBA team that drafts Tre Johnson are going to have to work on more than anything on the offensive end.
The likelihood I doubt he goes 3 to Philadelphia, but he could. Or he goes to a Charlotte where he becomes kind of their third best player with LaMelo and Brandon Miller. He comes to the Jazz where he becomes either their first or second best player with Lauri Markkanen. And he goes to the Wizards where he becomes their best player. Is he better off being kind of secondary to start off in his career in a Charlotte or Philadelphia, or is he better off being the show right away in Utah or Washington?
That's a great question. Look, I always want rookies to not have to be the guy, right? Some guys are obviously capable of it. They can come into the league and just be a team leader right away. And I don't want to make it sound like I don't think Tre can be that dude. But again, just seeing him have to shoulder all of the load like he did at Texas, if he can have a running mate, I think the biggest problem for Tre is Texas didn't really have a true point guard. So they tried to, square peg, round hole, or round peg, square hole, whatever the expression is with Tre Johnson, I think a little bit too much and make him more of a point guard. If he's got somebody who can set him up and give him cleaner looks off the bounce, then I think that's going to help him out a lot. So again, I know I'm kind of dodging the question here. Do I think he can be a team's best player / leading scorer from day one? Yes. But like anybody else, I would love for him to be paired with somebody else who could take the pressure off of him. It's like, hey, if Tre has an off night, the team still has a chance to win because they've got other go-to options. That, I think, would be the best case scenario for Tre when he gets to the league.
So I generally believe he's going to score 20 points a game in the NBA. But that can be a lot of different things. That can be Jordan Poole.
Yeah.
That can be Devin Booker. I don't know where Bradley Beal fits into that anymore, if that's a positive or a negative. Let's call Devin Booker a positive. Let's call Jordan Poole a negative. Is he a Jordan Poole 20 a game, or is he a Devin Booker 20 a game?
Yeah, that's. I think he's somewhere right in between there, right? And the only thing, we all know what happened with Jordan Poole in Golden State, right? Like, I don't think he's that type of negative energy, but again, I do wonder a little bit about the emotions, letting those get the best of him. That's the way Tre Johnson becomes Jordan Poole. I don't think he's that type of player. I just think maybe his emotions detract him from getting where he can get in the NBA. But man, I mean, if he could be Devin Booker, Tyler Herro is another name I think about too. A really good scorer who can score at all three levels, who can create for himself, but also can shoot, off a pass or off the dribble, whatever. That's another name I would look at. But yeah, in the right situation, I mean, Tre Johnson, again, he's a pure shooter. I think he's the best shooter in this class. I think he's the best pure scorer in this class. So in the right system, I think he's got a shot to be a little closer to Devin Booker than Jordan Poole.
Brad Kellner's got to go because Con Knippel's on line 3. Con Knippel on line 3 about who's the best shooter in the draft. Brad, thanks so much for the time. Appreciate it. Great to get your insight on Tre Johnson. Keep up the good work on Locked on Longhorns.
Appreciate you, David. Same to you. Thank you.
Now heard the local expert and Rafael Barlowe on VJ Edgecombe Jeremiah Fears and Tre Johnson. My guess is Ace Bailey. We'll do Ace Bailey tomorrow, but my guess is he's going before them. Of those three, from what you've heard, who would you take? You can vote at Locked On Jazz on YouTube in our community, or just hit me on X and let me know. Who would you take? That's Locked On Jazz today. Thanks for tuning in. 5-star reviews are appreciated. Throw some comments in the comment section. Interact with everyone. Thumbs up, hearts, all those good things. We love them. Subscribe. Follow me on socials at DLock09. Have a great one. Now we send you the first ever 24/7 national NBA channel, Locked On NBA. Check out Locked On NBA Big Board with Rafael Barlowe for all the latest draft news.